Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here. What the world needs now is love. More love.
Stars literally aligned.
He's always been the one.
There's someone out there for everyone.
I'm Nancy Regan, your host on the Canadian Love Map. We are on a journey to uncover and share love stories of all kinds.
He's never forgotten to bring me flowers.
We're hoping we're going to give a little good news to this world.
Even in these dark times, the life continues to go on.
It's all about compassion, devotion, adventure, and of course, love.
Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs love.
This is the Canadian Love Map.
Well, love is the most important thing.
I just think so insanely highly of my mom, and I think the way I see her is not the way a lot of people see her. She's not afraid to do anything, and she's got all this exceptional talent, and she's kind of a bit of a badass, but she doesn't see any of that. She'll just do things that other people would be so afraid to do, and so I like other people to see that in her, because she's pretty strong and she's pretty incredible.
Today's love story belongs to Carol and Belinda of Winnipeg, another mother-daughter duo who have stepped outside their family connection to become business partners. Carol's love of baking and Belinda's natural business sense have been mixed thoroughly to create a recipe for success. Their high tea bakery has become a local favorite and a tourist destination, even catering to the late Queen Elizabeth II. This is the Canadian Love Map. Belinda and Carol, thanks so much for joining us today on the Canadian Love Map.
Thanks for having us.
I'm curious to start by asking, did one or the other of you have to convince your partner in crime to do this podcast?
Absolutely. Carol hates doing anything in public. She even got married by eloping. So this woman will not be in public unless absolutely forced. So yeah, I had to convince her.
I love it. I noticed immediately that you call her Carol. Tell me about that.
That actually started pretty early. No, with the RWB, Royal Winnipeg Ballet. So we grew up at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet after we moved to Winnipeg. And my father worked there. I worked there. My sister danced there. My brother danced there. My mom worked there. So it was a whole family thing. And I, at 14, liked to think I was 22. And I didn't want people to think of me as a kid. So I refused to call either of my parents mom or dad when I was at work because I was so professional. And so I would call them Mike and Carol at work. And it just, over the years, and then I've worked with them so much over the years in different things that I just always call them Carol. All of my customers call her mom, but I call her Carol at work.
Okay, I want to pick up on something you said, because I think you referred to yourself as being 14 when you were working at the ballet. What were you doing?
Yes. I started at 13 in telemarketing, and then at 14 I was their receptionist and their elevator operator. At 15 I moved into the box office and was helping with their accounting and would also run the professional division office or general division office. And so I worked from a young age. So I always thought I was older than I was, and I've been 5'8" since I was about 12. So everybody always thought I was a little bit older, which helped as well.
Well, it sounds like it also gave you a grounding in business management in a way.
Yeah. To a certain extent. I had started even before that. Even when we lived in British Columbia, I would make my parents get me a booth at the Sea Fair.
Yeah,
we had my
Mel had the candy booth at the local fair,
the old candy shop, and I had my paper routes, which I would then force my sister to do, but I would collect the money. And I've been working since a very young age. I always enjoyed the whole entrepreneurial side of it.
And she's very good at math. She's always had a talent for math. So she knows how to do the numbers right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that married well with your family history with baking. Tell me about how far back that history goes.
Well, actually, it's not. It's just family baking. It's my mother used to bake all the time and taught me to bake. And when I went to school in Australia, part of your schooling was learning. You had your home economics, but you actually learned to bake in there too, and that. So I had that. But then just being married and having 5 kids, the demand for birthday cakes, et cetera, and that you teach yourself a lot. So for all the decorating, I'm totally self-taught, and that. We used to belong, there was a little co-op in Pell River, and I used to sell cakes to the co-op and started with that. And then when we moved to Winnipeg, when Melanie reached a high level in the ballet, she was going down to Australia to join the Australian Ballet School. And that, so to raise money, I started decorating cookies and selling them. And then Belinda, being the business idea genius that she is, thought, oh, there's money in this. Because people kept asking for the cookies for a lot, afterwards and that. So
they became a bit of a ballet staple. All the board members would buy them and have them for their events and things like that. And my mom, in her, infinite business wisdom, used to sell them for $3 a dozen. Beautifully hand decorated lace, intricate cookies, because a bag of Oreos was about $3 at the time, and you got way more than a dozen in there, so she couldn't possibly charge more than $3 for a dozen cookies. So how she ever fundraised that, I have no idea, but she did.
That sounds labor intensive, but it also sounds like there was a lot of creativity woven into baking for you, Carol.
Oh, well, I've always been artistic and that, like I paint watercolors and that as well. And that, so like the whole family actually is artistic and that.
Yeah, as my German husband likes to say, very artsy fartsy. But she's instilled that in us since we were kids. Like growing up, she was, we were painting, we were drawing. She would bring us to galleries, and whenever we traveled, she would introduce us to the arts. And so even though we were kind of these like hippie homesteader type almost, then we also had this very elegant, like artistic, and my mom has always just loved learning too. So she instilled in us this deep love of learning and education. And so we've always had that kind of balance. You can throw us in the mud and we'll be perfectly fine running around naked as children. And then we will also go to the ballet, put on our best, and do just fine there too.
You can dress them up and take them out, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Belinda, do you remember when your mom introduced you to baking?
Young, in Pell River. I don't remember specifically, but I have all of these photos going back. Like, I remember learning to bake that 2-egg cake. Remember that one? You taught me when I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. And that was my staple cake. And then she would taught us to make icing. There's pictures of me at like 6, 7 with my best friend decorating the cakes and just playing around. But, we grew up making blackberry pies and cookies, and we didn't do as much of the decorating back then. It was all
the decorating came as you got older.
Yeah, I got older and wanted to make it fancier. But back then it was blackberry pies were always my favorite. Apple pies. Yeah, we had an orchard, so it was beautiful.
I'm thinking about how lucky your family members were.
Well, and that was the thing. When you grow up like that, I was always jealous. Like I would go to my friends' houses so I could have chips and pop, because in my house it was, handmade organic pies and granola and whatever. And I thought I was so hard done by. I had no clue.
The East Coast version of that is told by many people who in the 60s and 70s gave away lobster sandwiches in exchange for peanut butter sandwiches in small towns throughout the Maritimes.
Basically exactly the same. Like I would be that kid at the birthday party just eyeing the sweets table because that stuff was not allowed in our house.
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Oh my God. Oh, I can relate. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of candy allowed in my household. So I'm afraid I became a sugar sugar addict, which is why your story really appeals to me.
To this day, you'll find like jelly beans hidden in my house and that, like, I can't get past it.
So when did the idea of going into business together come about?
So that actually was, I mean, it was sort of a thing with the fundraising that you had started.
Right, yeah.
It bugged me that she was only charging $3. So
Like we didn't start for a while after that.
No.
I was sick, and then I changed jobs.
Mom went through cancer, and then she changed jobs, and she was it was actually when you were rejoining the workforce.
Yeah.
Really. And she'd been a stay-at-home mom for so long, and then she'd gone through her health battles, and she was going back into the workforce and really only finding like minimum wage jobs because, of course, you've been raising kids for 20 something years. Mm-hmm. And I, being in my 20s and just, all the cockiness that implies, right? Like, I'm just like, oh, I can build you a business. You've got all this talent. And she's so good at baking. I was like, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to help you build a business, and we're going to make the cutest little bakery. And then I'll help you out for 3 years, and then I'll leave, and you're going to have a bakery. And, we had no idea what it meant to have a bakery. And we're picturing what a lot of our customers picture. It's just like Granny in the back rolling her one apple pie, right? Like that's what everybody thinks of as a bakery. And that's what I thought it was. And
at the time I was working as an accounts payable clerk at a rail company, and I came home one day and Belinda informs me that she'd got a table at the wedding show.
And that you owed me $300. So our initial input into High Tea Bakery was $300 each. And I'd rented us a booth, which I just decided to do. And
no pre-warning, anything.
I had kind of chatted about it. I actually had been working on a business plan, but I went into hyperdrive after that, and we used that as our test to just see if there was enough people liked it. And they did. They did, even though we didn't even show up. We spent so much time. Like, we were so obsessed with the baking. We had this gorgeous 3-tiered cake that looked like a peacock's feathers coming all the way down.
And all the cupcakes with the flowers.
Cupcakes. And they were all so pretty.
We forgot a sign.
No sign.
Oh.
We go to a massive convention center sized wedding show. Not a single sign to even say who we are, because that's how genius we were at business in the beginning. But
it was a learning curve.
Yes.
Our neighboring booth they showed up with a sign for us one day.
I think they were just embarrassed to be next to us.
Carol, it sounds like from your perspective, Belinda kind of sprang this on you.
Yes.
And what was your reaction?
Well, I'm game for anything. So I thought, why not? Why not work for ourselves rather than for someone else? And it appealed to me.
You could see her vision, like you trusted that if she felt this could be a success business-wise?
Yeah.
What was the next step in creating this business? You went from being signless.
Renting
I went into full planning mode. So I was still working for Air Canada at the time. And I would spend every lunch hour there was a business development center near Eaton Place there. And I would go over there and research on my lunch hours, just everything from demographics to competitor info, anything that they had that I could go through. And I sort of created my own little business plan. Then I started looking for spots. And our original plan was actually never to have the storefront right away. We had actually wanted to just have a kitchen so that we could provide these, because you can't go into, golf courses and professional hotels if you're not cooking in a commercial space.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that was legit, and I wanted to rent us a kitchen. And through looking, I ended up finding this little spot, and it was going to be just as affordable, if not more so, than some of the kitchens we were looking at building. And it ended up it was this little, 500 square foot abandoned auto parts shop on Portage Avenue in Winnipeg. And we had to completely renovate it by ourselves. But I don't know, for some I don't even know why they rented it to me, because I had no experience. I was like, my degree is in fine arts, and I'd done cycling, and I worked for Air Canada. I had no business backing whatsoever. And yet they let me sign a 5-year lease And I actually negotiated like, I think 6 or 7 months of free rent. I negotiated us a reno budget. Yeah, because it needed so much. So I got all this stuff in there and I'm like, well, I guess we're going to open a store then.
And then all the equipment was bought at auctions.
Yeah. So then I started going to auctions, and Carol would take a deposit on a cake and I would go to an auction and buy an oven. And then I would like, so
from one pocket to the other. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We opened in November of 2003. And I think on our first day, we made like $12.31, and we were tickled pink. We're like, oh my God, someone came in. We are awesome.
We're
kicking
something.
Butt.
Just back up for a second, if you would. I would love for you to walk us through that process. You described the space as it was and the renovation you refer to. I'd love to know what that looked like. What was your vision for this space and how did you change it?
Well, it was pretty tiny, so there wasn't only...
You had to meet health standards.
Mm-hmm.
So flooring options were limited so it was we ended up with tile.
We tiled it because we knew how to tile, so we tiled it. Yeah. But for the front though, I remember I wanted the awning, and I wanted that cute little, I wanted it to look like a little European storefront because we've spent so much time traveling, and I think that's our joint passion is travel even more than baking. And so we just really wanted it to have that little European storefront feel, which nothing had at that time. And I wanted it, we'd kind of brainstorm together, and we knew our color scheme and everything. We wanted the classic colors. We wanted black and white and gold. And so that's what we tried to put together, but on our, $300 less that we'd already spent. So their $0 budget. So literally everything was bought at auction, found in garage sales, inherited from anywhere that someone would give us something and I could repaint it.
Bought secondhand from Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, Habitat. Our first mixer we found at a consignment store for furniture, and it just happened to be in there.
What was it like navigating this whole journey as mother and daughter?
Well, in the beginning, I think it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Then we went to war for a few years.
So there were challenges.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because, even though we get along really well, Belinda, I guess because I'm more on the creative mind side and she's more on the business mind side, I didn't have the long-term plan of what she was trying to achieve in my mind. Mm-hmm. And that's so,
I don't even think it's about creative or business. I think you were very much still in that mindset of there's work to do. I'll just do the work. Right? Like she's kind of that generation. You don't think outside of it of, well, I don't want to do this work. Could we hire someone to do it? She's just like, there's work to be done. I'll work and she would work till 2 a.m, right? Like we both would, because we both have the same work ethic. But as a planner, I was trying to get her to look forward and say, well, what do you want? And she tends to be very selfless. And so she's always just like, well, I'll do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. No, it's our business. What do you want? And then also like we owned it 50-50. And in my mind, if I have a partner, I would expect them to give me 50% say in everything. And so I wanted her to have her 50% say, not knowing that she really didn't want to say. She just wanted to not have to make decisions, though that stresses her out, which I didn't realize till later, right? So the whole time I'm battling with her, what do you want? It doesn't matter. You decide. And I'm waiting for the answer. She doesn't want to give it. And so there was probably a good 3 to 4 year period where we just went back and forth. And I just kept growing the business with no real direction because I didn't really know what she wanted. And also it wasn't at a point where I thought I could leave her because she didn't really want to make any decisions. So I just kept growing the business basically with no real goal in mind until she finally admitted, she's like, well, I don't actually really want to work full time and I don't want to run it. And I just kind of like to decorate and back. And I'm like, well, that would have been good to know. I guess I'll hire a head baker so you don't have to do all that. And
that's interesting. Carol, from your perspective, what generational differences do you see in your approaches, you and Belinda?
My mother's whole opinion was you don't bother to educate a girl because they just get married and have kids anyway. So she didn't believe in education for a woman and that. But she did believe that a woman could do anything she set her mind to doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was sort of a bit of a clash there.
Yeah, I think you're often at war with yourself a little bit over that.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mom doesn't understand her own worth. Like, I think she's so incredible, but she's like, well, I don't have I wasn't professionally trained. And I'm like, you have more baking knowledge in your little finger than half the kids I hire out of baking school. Because at that time, and just because of her passion for educating herself too, she has so much baking knowledge, but she doesn't have the degree. So she always would be like, no, it's fine. I don't really know, this kind of thing. And yeah, it's been hard to get her to understand that no. You're actually exceptionally good at this, whether you like to admit it or not.
We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. I'm curious about whether there were particular bakeries, either in your local area or online or on TV, that inspired you.
Not really.
Definitely not locally.
No.
And I mean, this is a little bit silly, but we didn't really shop at bakeries a lot because we didn't have any money at the time.
And
so we couldn't afford to shop it, and we made everything
own.
at home. So,
and you could make it yourself, yeah.
I would say that we were influenced a lot. That was the beginning of kind of the Martha Stewart days.
Yeah.
That's probably where you used to get a lot of designs when you first started.
Yeah, probably.
It's like, Martha Stewart, just that, because prior to that, there wasn't really anyone that did the decorative. Right? Like if you were getting a decorated cake, it was a Safeway cake. Like everybody who brings us their vintage wedding photos, it's a cake bought at Safeway and stacked or whatever, right? So it wasn't, the industry as it is today is 100% different than when we started. And, back then it was quite unique what we were doing.
And then we went to conventions in the States and saw what other decorators were doing elsewhere, and that inspired us.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But that also gave you a lot of confidence too, because I think at that point we were going to like national conventions, and Mom realized that her work was better than 90% of what was there. And so finally I was like, see, told you.
Did that shock you, Carol?
It did, yes, actually. Yes. Yeah, because it's odd how you do think that yours is just, it couldn't possibly be as good as and that. But when you actually go and meet these people and see, oh, damn, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what sort of feedback were you getting? So I know on the first day you made the big 1250. There doesn't sound to be a great business plan there, but it caught on, and I'd love to know how that happened.
I would say the first one was Marianne Warhoff. Remember the Free Press food critic?
Oh, right. Yes.
It wasn't very long in. We had maybe been open 3 months, and she had clearly been in. No one knew what she looked like in those days. Now she was one of these very incognito food critics, and us with our, brilliant knowledge of how the food industry worked. We really the Free Press actually called us and said, by the way, our food critic's going to be doing a review on you, and it's going to be positive. So we're just warning you so that you can bake extra.
Right. I forgot about that.
And we had no idea what that meant. So we're like, okay, instead of the 12 cookies that I was putting out, I'll put 24 or whatever, right?
And they were trying to prepare you for a deluge of customers.
Yeah, they were trying to realize
what a deluge was.
We had no clue. And it turned out to be this beautiful, it was a full page in the newspaper, and, this is pre-internet, big days. So that was huge then. And there was a lineup when we opened. We sold out in the first half hour. We had to make a bunch more. It was really
embarrassing.
Yeah, it was.
30 minutes in and you've got empty shelves. What did she say in that review?
I don't even remember. She loved your lemon tarts.
Yeah, she named a few things
she liked the quality, because
we
only bake from scratch, and we only use local butter and real ingredients. So if it was lemon, it's fresh zested lemon and stuff like that. And at the time, that was pretty revolutionary as well. Most places were just baking with mixes and, artificial ingredients. So yeah, it was funny. Actually, like, it's just how naive we were back then. These days, if I got that call, I'd be like, oh my God, call in all the staff. And we were like, us two with our little cookies.
Aprons on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready. No, we're not.
We're ready. All two of us.
My
And
gosh.
then my youngest daughter also joined us, and that she was working for first part-time while going to school. And then she ended up being our head decorator.
Eventually, yeah. We also had some nice ones in there. We also had the Junos, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And then we always supported the arts. And that actually helped us a lot at the very beginning, because back then those were probably the most creative people in Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
And so by always, supporting their galas or donating things here and there to their events, we maintained a pretty decent client list of all of the board members and all the people within the arts. And Winnipeg arts it's a big community, but it's a very incestuous community. Like, everybody works everywhere else and everybody knows each other. And so that actually helped us grow quite fast, or at least get a certain reputation quickly within that community. And then that's when we got the Junos, and we did cookies.
When you say that, I was going to say, you said the Junos, what did you do for them?
So it was EMI Records, and they actually had us make hand decorated cookies. We hand painted the CDs to look like each of their artists who was nominated got a hand painted CD. And so they were presented to each of these artists. And we even got letters like years later saying, I ran into that manager and he still got that cookie on his desk. And so it was kind of cool. It was just one of these fun, creative ones we got to do again.
That's amazing. And tell me about the kind of feedback you were getting from your customers.
We got spoiled. Remember, we used to get the gifts and thank you. Oh God,
we had one customer. She's the most lovely lady ever, and she was a regular customer all the time. And it was Thanksgiving, and she stopped out front, came in, and had baked a pumpkin pie for us because she figured we were so busy we wouldn't have time for ourselves. Like, we have the nicest customers.
Yeah. So we really split. I mean, as we got bigger, that didn't happen as much. Obviously, you still get really lovely thank yous and that. But in those days, it was really, really sweet. It was nice.
You got used to people being bowled over by the quality and the deliciousness. Carol, you mentioned that lovely lady, and that quote made me think of another lovely lady that I gather you had the privilege of baking for, a particular lovely lady from the UK.
Yes, a royal lady, the Queen. And that when she came to visit
I want to say 2010.
Somewhere like that.
Yeah. But
one of our customers was the Manitoba Governor General's daughter, and Lieutenant Governor, his daughter, and she was a regular customer of ours. And they were going to he was having a garden tea party in her honor, and she recommended to her father our cookies, and we ended up
doing 3,000 hand monogrammed E2R imperial cookies for Her Royal Highness. And then they did a special box that was for her and went into her room. And we were able to tell people about it at a certain point, which got us a 3-minute feature on the National on CBC.
Oh, wow.
Which once that hit, it really was.
That literally set us up.
Now imperial cookies I probably outsell everything in my bakery 10-1. Like, it's crazy. And now every time something royal happens, because you don't really realize how many royalists there are in Canada until something happens, right? And I had no clue. I mean, I like a picture of a pretty dress as much as the next person, but I don't really follow the royal family so much. And then after this happened, I had to start, because literally when the wedding happened, we had lineups down the street and media people and everything. Because I guess once you've done one royal item, then you're in the Rolodex or whatever as go to them for a sound bite.
So
And
every birth now,
I didn't even know, like when their first child was born, I was actually driving back from my cabin, and I'm driving by my bakery, and I already see all the media vans out front, and I knew I'd left my sister in charge. And so I stop and I go in, and she's like, apparently a baby was born. And they called me and asked, are we doing something royal? And I said, yes. And I threw 1,000 crowns on mini imperials, and she just started icing them and throwing.
We are now.
Yeah, we are now. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, yes, I would think that would have made quite a splash if you were on the national, and people obviously love what you're doing. I have to say that when I think about decorating anything, I'm hearing you say you did thousands of cookies with hand monograms.
Yeah.
That sounds like a recipe for carpal tunnel syndrome.
It is. Yeah. There's a reason she can't decorate anymore, actually. She has arthritis in all her fingers now. But yeah, you do have to be careful. Like all of our decorators have to watch it. You can't overdo it or you will get carpal tunnel.
All of those muscles being overused. What have you learned about this business from each other?
Good question. I mean, from my mom, I've learned the baking. Like actually the imperial cookies, I think it's one of the things I'm proudest of the most, because we did it together. Yeah. We went through the whole,
it was like food contest, Manitoba food process.
Yeah, it was some sort of contest. But anyway, we wanted to streamline how we did the imperial cookies, because it's one of the few recipes that wasn't started in, like, it wasn't a family recipe. It's not one mom brought in already making. We developed ourselves. Yeah, and we developed it together. And my mom has all this baking knowledge, but I'm more, I guess, a little bit more scientific when I go. Like I make us, when I'm doing testing, it's like we have to have all these parameters, and we're going to try that, and then we're going to try this, and then we're going to do that. And so we sort of went through the recipe all together until we found like the perfect one. Yeah. And like now we've been making it.
The jam was the hardest thing to get.
Yeah, it took us 3 months to set the jam or decide on the jam.
You're making me hungry now. You have to describe these imperial cookies.
All over the world, they're a common cookie. They're known as empire cookies, imperial cookies.
Like a Linzer cookie in Germany.
Yeah, like Germany.
But our version
is different.
Yeah. So it's an almond shortbread sandwiched with the raspberry jam, and then it's just got a pure almond icing over top. So they're quite sweet. They're very addictive. Mm-hmm. And but in our day, they're a very popular cookie in Winnipeg, and people call them dream cookies, empire cookies. They call them all different things. But when we first started making them, the only version was this big version, like, about 3.5 inches across, and very thick, always made with margarine, always made with artificial extracts, and not ours, but that's what existed at the time. Yeah. So when we decided we wanted to bring it into the bakery, we're like, we can't do that. And that's what set about our 8 billion tests until we got the one that we wanted. And it's funny because now in Winnipeg, we decided on that also a prettier design. We made a small and a large, and we had this pretty little fluted edge with a cutout in the middle. And now
more
pretty
like
much
a Linzer.
Yeah, more like a Linzer. And now almost all the bakeries do them that way. And when I talk to my son's friends, they think that's what an imperial cookie is. And I'm like, no, that's what we made an imperial cookie. Before that, they look completely different. And
cool.
So now, like, our design has kind of become the Winnipeg norm, and everybody makes them that way now. So, which is kind of nice.
That's great. I'm curious to know what you each have learned about the other through this endeavor.
Oh, that's hard. I mean, I knew you were very good at business and everything, but I didn't realize how good you were. Very dedicated, and that, like, she puts 110% into whatever she does, and that, yeah.
For me, it's not so much learning new things about my mom. It's more, I feel like I've been trying to get her to see herself for 20 years. Like, I don't know. I just think so insanely highly of my mom. And I think the way I see her is not the way a lot of people see her. Like, I think everybody always talks about my mom. Oh, she's so sweet, and she's tiny, and she says sorry a lot. And, she does. But I just see her very differently. Like, my mom, has always been very, very intelligent, exceptionally talented, but also a rebel. And you don't see that in little Carol here saying sorry. But, you know, she started out as a hippie in counterculture in the 60s. She's backpacking through Indonesia, pregnant with me in the 70s. She's, you know, she started this business with me out of the blue at 50, right? Like she's not afraid to do anything. And she's got all this exceptional talent. And she's kind of a bit of a badass, but she doesn't see any of that. And I don't think a lot of other people do, but I do. Like now and I'm sorry, I'm going to say your age, but she's 72 and she's traveling alone to Europe for the summer to do her own trip. And like, she'll just do things that other people would be so afraid to do and so timid. And she doesn't do it out of ego because she has no confidence in herself, but she just does it, you know, because she likes these things. And I don't know. I like other people to see that in her because she's pretty strong and she's pretty incredible.
Carol, you look extremely uncomfortable with this description. How does it feel to hear Belinda describing you in that way?
I think she's overdoing it a bit.
Well, I have a mother named Carol, and she would say the same thing. She says sorry a lot too.
Same age group.
She's a little older than you, but there's a lot of apology and not recognizing her own inner goddess, I would say.
Yeah. Mom hates stuff like that. Yeah. And the kids she's raised, like all of my siblings, are really interesting people.
Yeah.
And I would say that's
all our kids,
you know, largely in part due to you. So
just own it, Carol. Just own it.
Own it. Yeah.
I'll turn the table around and ask you, what do you admire and love most about Belinda?
I could probably say all the same in reverse. And that, like, back to you, and that you're very artistic. You're very, I mean, she's been through a lot especially the last few years, and that she's had to be so strong. What she's had to deal with, and she's come through, and
make me cry.
Admire so much the strength there. She's a very strong. She's very creative. She's
Teflon.
It sounds to me like you inspire each other.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I'd say the whole family sort of inspires back and forth.
Yeah. We have a very tight-knit family. So even though it's always kind of us two doing this, and even though, like, I've got one sister in Dubai and one in England and two brothers as well, but especially the girls, I think we all play off of each other a lot.
Oh, that's amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your relationship and your great success story with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.